Hey, cool. Well, good morning. Hi. Uh, let's see. Now,
Morning.
I do, like Glenn said, I do have a slide deck, and now I'm trying to figure out how do I share it. Well, good
Oh,
morning. I'm sorry about this.
maybe I'll give a quick introduction. Kennedy Jinks, when I first started, think back about 2008, if I recall, we had Kennedy Jinks assist TUD in completing, actually, I believe it was a 2005 urban water management plan. So that was kind of the beginnings of my involvement there. And then that was kind of thrown together as you can imagine. I started in 2008, so we're still completing the '05 report. We then moved on to the 2010 report and put that into finally a clean, professional format for DWR. And then somewhere in there, that those were required to receive the grant funding. So that was kind of the big push. And then since then, I've worked with Kennedy Jinks on the 2015 update, and then now this one. And each time, it's just getting more and more extensive in the regulation and the reporting. So, and in fact, Kennedy Jinks, well, they can kind of introduce themselves, but they're part of the committees that are building in the regulations for these plans. So they actually have folks embedded who are intimately familiar with what's required. So their input's quite valuable, and they did a great job for us. And even in terms of us struggling to pull some of the information together, they were able to put it together in a clean format for us. So with that, Jennifer, roll. It's all yours.
Great, thank you. And I found the button to share.
Very good.
Um, so, so like Glenn said, my name's Jennifer Lau Larson. I'm the project manager for Kennedy Jinks, assisting the district this year in the update for the Urban Water Management Plan and Water Shortage Contingency Plan. So this presentation will provide a high-level overview of the plan's contents and findings presented in the public review draft of the urban plan. The Urban Water Management Plan is intended to serve as a general, flexible, and open-ended document that periodically can be updated to reflect changes in the regional water supply trends, as well as conservation and water use efficiency policies. The district's 2020 Urban Water Management Plan does revise the 2015 Urban Water Management Plan, as well as incorporates changes enacted by legislation since that time. Urban water management plans were or are developed in adherence to the 1983 Urban Water Management Planning Act and subsequent legislation for the purposes of encouraging water suppliers to conduct water supply planning. The municipal water suppliers that have at least 3,000 service connections or sell at least 3,000 acre feet per year of water are required to submit urban plans every 5 years to the California Department of Water Resources. Urban water management plans will evaluate a supplier's ability to meet demands in normal, single dry, and a multiple dry year period, which has been updated to 5 years. It used to be 3 years. And then they'll also review water use and loss during those same conditions. Urban water management plans are a common requirement of state grant and loan funding assistance, even though the one piece of legislation that actually required it has been removed or changed. So it just depends now on each grant program.
Excuse me, could you repeat that, please? Could you repeat?
About the grant funding?
Yeah, the grant that it's changed.
So there was one piece of legislation that said in order for any urban water supplier to be eligible for any state grants, they had to have an urban water management plan. But that legislation has since been removed. However, the individual state grant programs can still require an urban water management plan, but there's just now a little bit more wiggle room so that if you don't have an urban water management plan, you can maybe submit other forms of documentation.
Thank you.
And then section 1 of the urban water management plan provides additional background information related to the Urban Water Management Planning Act and California Water Code. And then as you go through the urban water management plan, just keep in mind that these plans are high level and not meant to be specific action plans or a substitute for project specific planning documents. So the urban water management plan contains the following topics. A description of the district service area, including population and demographic trends, historical water uses and sources, including, again, water loss reporting and recycled water use, compliance with the Water Conservation Bill of 2009, which is also known as SBX 7-7, which requires retail suppliers demonstrate a 20% reduction in per capita water use by 2020. Water supply reliability under normal, single dry, and multiple dry year hydrologic conditions. Just kind of describe the effects or potential effects of climate change or just infrastructure, water quality on water supplies and water supply reliability. Provide an estimate of energy intensity of water from source to customer. A description of demand management measures used by the district to meet conservation goals, and a water shortage contingency planning action, specifically in alignment with California Department of Water Resources 6 water shortage stages. Other updates since 2015, in addition to just population, water supply, and water demand estimates, are also just a new DWR submittal date of July 1st, 2021, documentation of the district's achievement with SBX 7-7, completion of the American Water Works Association methods to conduct a water loss audit for the past 5 years, a separate standalone water shortage contingency plan, which now includes a description of the procedures for conducting the annual water supply and demand assessment, and then a drought risk assessment showing the district's ability to meet water demands, assuming a drought over the next 5 years. But before we get too far, I just wanted to say right up front that ultimately the plan documents that in a normal year, single dry year, and multiple dry year, TUD has adequate supplies for customers. The Urban Water Management Plan and the next 2 slides, of course, provide the data and analysis used to come to this conclusion. Section 2 of the Urban Water Management Plan evaluates many of the factors influencing water demand, such as changing population, land use, social and demographic factors, climate, and water customer type. Growth projections for the number of service connections and volume of water use were calculated for the years 2020 through 2045 in 5-year increments. Future treated water demands were estimated based on the treated water system historical trend growth rates and water use records. Water use projections are based on average non-acquisition growth rates established by historical trends for treated water sales. Projections include the conversion of wholesale customers to retail customers, as well as raw and treated water losses.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
What did you folks use? Because I have not had the time to really read this huge document. I just got it a couple days ago. But what did you folks use for a population number for those years? As far as new water users and that sort of thing.
Right. So, and Glenn did most of the work, but correct me if I'm wrong. There was a population memo developed by TUD for a separate effort, and that was it's the treated water. What is it? What is the report? It's the treated water system optimization plan. There we go. And then we looked at, so we started with that, and then we also looked at historic service growth statistics, just taking a look at how fast, there's non-acquisition growth, and then there's, of course, growth because of system acquisition, which hasn't happened in a long time, but non-acquisition growth rate, historic trends, and just comparing how that looks in comparison with the treated water system optimization plan, as well as California Department of Finance growth rates and the Tuolumne County General Plan growth rates. So, and then seeing like, since Glenn has a pulse on the number of connections, he can actually say, okay, well that, this, and this looks like it meshes with historic data or with what we are seeing.
The reason why I asked is because Tuolumne County, not to mention California on a whole, is not gaining population, they're losing population. And I imagine it would be very hard to, you need a crystal ball in order to figure out where you're going to be at 2045.
Mm-hmm. Correct. So the average that we found due to non-acquisition growth is less than 1% growth rate historically. And then even with system acquisition, it's still less than 1% growth rate.
Thank you.
And then kind of related to that, recycle water demand, which is very heavily based on population, right? Because it's the water use entering the sewer system essentially. That also assumed a 0.61% growth rate, just based on the Tuolumne County General Plan update public review draft. So Section 2 also evaluates long-term trends in water use in the district's treated water service area, including water use in gallons per capita per day. The evaluation found the district's water use in gallons per capita per day has not rebounded to levels prior to 2014-2015 drought, and determined that the district is in compliance with the Water Conservation Bill of 2009, which targeted a decrease in municipal water use of 20% by the year 2020. The Urban Water Management Plan also evaluates water supplies, like I said before. So the surface water, groundwater, and recycled water availability over the period of 2025 to 2045. Section 3 specifically looks at the availability of each source, potential limitations such as water quality, hydrology, climate, and evaluates the future availability of supplies given an average year, a single dry year, and a multiple dry year period of 5 years. And then Section 4 provides specifics on the district's wastewater system and anticipated supply from recycled water for beneficial uses. So the TUD is just the plan also provides some background on each supply. So surface water is provided from the South Fork of the Stanislaus River under TUD's agreement with PG&E, as well as TUD operated groundwater wells. Surface water supply in the South Fork of the Stanislaus River accounts for approximately 97% of the supply available for potable use. But groundwater in the county overall is limited due to the hard impermeable bedrock that covers most of the county. And then, as I said before, TUD also uses disinfected secondary treated recycled water for irrigation of agricultural lands only. Recycled water does not replace the treated water demand, but it supplements a portion of the raw water supplied to agricultural customers. In general, the district supply is expected to be 100% reliable through 2045 in normal years. So what's considered normal/average years. This reliability is a result of the historic reliability and availability of flows from the Stanislaus River, groundwater supply, and recycled water for ag use. Even during the single dry and multiple dry year scenarios, TUD supply is expected to be around 95% through 2045, with decreases in supply attributed to reductions in groundwater pumping and recycled water availability, but not attributed to the Stanislaus River. Section 6 evaluates the district's ability to meet water demands with the anticipated supplies, given these normal single dry and multiple dry years. And this slide shows the comparison of the district's water supplies and demand. And notice that even in a single dry year, the district is expected to be able to meet demands without additional conservation through 2045. And really, this can be attributed to just the volume of unimpaired flow each year exceeding total reservoir storage capacity. So even when we assume groundwater is at 50% capacity and recycled water is reduced by 20%, you're still, at least, having a surplus of at least 20%. Furthermore, so the multiple dry year scenario is the scary one. But during that 5-year drought scenario through 2045, the district can still expect to meet demands without enacting additional conservation. And this assumes the same reductions in groundwater supply availability and recycled water supply availability. So in summary, the district has plenty of supply to meet its anticipated demands annually. However, looking at a more granular level and at factors that are outside of the district's control, such as Stanislaus River flows, regulatory restrictions, PG&E operations, and just the weather, those can impact the district's supply throughout the year. And the water shortage contingency plan outlines activities that the district can take when these factors contribute to a water shortage scenario. So the district's water shortage contingency plan is now required to be a standalone document that the district can update separate from the urban water management plan. It is included in the 2020 urban water management plan as Appendix N. The water shortage contingency plan was updated to meet new water code requirements, but it mostly presents relevant content from the district's water rules and regulations number 12, and it just organizes it in a way that conforms with DWR urban water management plan requirements. The water shortage contingency plan is intended to provide a plan of action if triggering events occur that result in reduced supply, increased demand, or a water emergency. The water shortage contingency plan includes voluntary and mandatory stages, which are intended to be fair to all water customers and users while having the least impact on businesses and employment or quality of life for residents. The water shortage contingency plan also includes procedures for conducting a water supply and demand assessment annually. And these are required to be submitted to DWR beginning June 2022. The assessments will monitor supplies, demands, and water trends, as well as coordinate with PG&E. And factors affecting supplies that have been identified in the procedures include just reservoir status and operations, groundwater infrastructure condition, and groundwater quality, and then identifying state, federal, and local regulations. Although demands are relatively stable, they generally vary based on weather, but also can be impacted by infrastructure such as like leaky fixtures. And then based on the annual water supply and demand assessment, the district can enact water shortage actions as needed. So this slide shows the district's water shortage stages according to the district's water rules and regulations number 12, and then also compares them with the DWR water shortage stages. And DWR is requiring that we lay out the district's responses according to 6 water shortage levels in increments of 10%, from 0 to greater than 50%, which greater than 50% is essentially just a catastrophic emergency water situation. So rather than updating the district's water rules and regulations number 12, DWR is allowing a crosswalk to show how they align with each other. So as you can see from the slide, the district's rules and regulation number 12, phase 2, corresponds with DWR shortage levels 2 through 4, which would implement voluntary and mandatory demand reduction actions, such as limiting landscape irrigation to within specific times, or expanding the public information campaign, or decreasing line flushing, requiring pools and spas to be covered, or restricting construction and dust control water use. Restrictions become mandatory corresponding to the level of DWR stage 3, but still within TUD's phase 2. And then district shortage level 5 corresponding with district regulation 12 phase 3, that's when the mandatory demand reduction actions start, such as limiting certain landscape irrigation, and then other voluntary restrictions that I had mentioned previously. And then DWR shortage level 6, which is rules and regulation number 12 phase 4, would restrict all landscape irrigation. And then beginning with DWR shortage level 2 and the district's phase 2, that's when fines will be issued for repeat violations of implemented limitations and restrictions. So basically, when high water users are notified, they will have successive chances to, correct and start conserving water. Any questions on this?
Yes, I do, Jennifer. This is Barbara, and let me see if I understand this crosswalk. Mm-hmm. For, let's say, for shortage level number 1, our TUD rules, it says that's our phase 1, which is education, and phase 2, we go into phase 2. So in other words, phase 1 is greater than 50%, but we also have to adopt at that level a less than 50%, which corresponds to shortage level 2.
Oh, actually, I'm sorry. So what you're looking at is this column here. This actually is not accurate. This label here. These are actually the conditions under which each phase would correspond. So ignore this title, but so phase shortage level 1 of DWR and TUD's phase 1 and then the voluntary portion of phase 2 would be enacted when supplies are greater than 50% of normal forecasted flow of Bulletin 120 by DWR for the Stanislaus River. So basically, the shortages are you're less than 10% shortage, so 0 to 10%, which is, you know, pretty much everyone's normal condition.
Okay, well, this is going to take some time to digest this. I can see that. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, and again, so I guess the nice thing about the water shortage contingency plan being a separate document is it also gives the district a little bit more runway to really outline all the shortage response actions, the conditions under which they need to be implemented, and just describing the procedures that the district would use to determine, you know, what is a shortage and how much of a shortage there is.
I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Does this include recycled and our raw water?
I want to say yes as a caveat. Recycled water, not so much, but only because it does supplement your raw water. But it, again, from the previous slides, I mean, the recycled water was really a drop in the bucket compared to what you get from the Stanislaus River and really what you get from groundwater. So most of this is going to be driven by conditions in the Stanislaus River.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and as you can see, like the shortages are determined based on the Stanislaus River. Although when you know, I guess Glenn, when he's calculating a shortage, he'll take a look at all the supplies.
Yeah, I think we may need to revisit this because we're kind of talking a couple of different things. One is what is a percent shortage to the district, and then we have sort of that percent of unimpaired flow based on the Bulletin 120. And so there's the river can have less than 30% of its flow, and we're still basically at 100%. We don't have a shortage. So I think now that I see it presented this way, I think we'll need to change that because a 30%, like stage shortage level 3, a 30% of forecasted flow in the Stanislaus River is almost like a 5% shortage or something. There's actually really no shortage. We're sort of we're made whole at a very low flow in the river, and then if it goes to 25%, then it starts really cutting into us then. So I think we should revisit this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Any other questions? Well, so those were the highlights of the Urban Water Management Plan. The next steps in the Urban Water Management Plan are to close out the public comment period on June 7th and address any comments received. And we can include the comments that we just received on the water shortage contingency plan as comments that we need to incorporate. And then with the committee's approval, the Urban Water Management Plan will be presented to the district board on June 8th. And then it's anticipated that the final 2020 Urban Water Management Plan public hearing, during which additional comments can be submitted, will occur on June 22nd, along with the adoption of the plan. So assuming the board approves of that. Then the plan will be submitted to DWR by July 1st, 2021, and then the state library. The final 2020 Urban Water Management Plan will be made available to the public within 30 days of submittal to DWR. So with that, are there any other questions?
Yes, Jennifer, I've got another question.
Mhm.
Back to that last slide. I think that at what point in that in this timeline does the board and staff actually look at the public comment and revise the plan before adoption, and actually, is there any time between the public hearing and the adoption? It just seems like we get complaints all the time that it feels like a slam dunk, you know?
Right. So there are a few different options for having the public hearing and the adoption. And it really does depend on the comments received, either leading up or during the public hearing. So if scenario one, if all the comments are received prior to the public hearing, and there are no further comments, then the board could just adopt it, or regardless, the board could just present the comments received and then choose to adopt at maybe a special meeting afterwards. I think in the past, historically, the district has had the public hearing separate from board adoption. Correct, Glenn?
That's correct.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, this was laid out to get well, first to bring these two plans to the committee for your review, and then to next get the or let me back up. First, to get the plan out to the public for review, so that all can sit down and read through it. Then the committee here to review this presentation, and then to roll to the entire board for another presentation. In fact, Jennifer, if I'm not mistaken, you have a little more comprehensive presentation you can go through to the full board and public at the public meeting on June 8th. And then from there, yeah, Jennifer's right. It depends on what comments that are being received through the comment period up to June 7th, and then the comments at the board meeting on June 8th. So at this point, yeah, it's aggressive. It's a proposed to go to the for public hearing and adoption on the 22nd. If there's more time needed, then the next point would be to just extend further presentations and public presentations to hear comments and discuss.
And so, Glenn, tell me, I believe it's a 60-day. Is it a 60-day review for this?
Well, Jennifer can correct me. It's a 60-day notification, primarily to the cities and counties that the plan is being rolled out, and they were provided notification that the plan is pending. And so, although it didn't get out till Friday, they were provided a notice of 60 days prior to the June 22nd adoption.
And I've in that section for the plan adoption, submittal, and implementation on 1.8 in the introduction, it did say for the public also. I just want to make sure that that the board has a chance to read the document and submit their comments.
Barbara, this is Eric, and Glenn and Jennifer, let me know if this is incorrect, but I think that the board has its ability to comment at any time, really. There's not a deadline for the board, because if this is your action to adopt. But as far as looking at this schedule here, the deadline for written public comment is June 7th. And then, of course, we have a meeting the day after June 8th. So that wouldn't give staff enough time to come to the board on June 8th and really thoughtfully present all the comments it had received the day before. But Glenn, I think, we've got 2 weeks between June 8th and June 22nd. Perhaps what we could do is put together a memo with all of the written comments that have been received and then responses that are prepared. Some of them may be recommendations, staff, I shouldn't say recommendations, Barbara, but some of them may be staff responses that say, well, we could make changes to the document, or this particular comment is already addressed in the document as is with a cited reference, and get that to the board sometime in the week of June, let's say June 11th, or June 15th, 14th, 15th, somewhere in there. And then it would give the board a little more time to digest all the written comments that had been received prior to coming to the meeting of June 22nd. Then you folks would at least be able to see the level of interest, the level of concern on the public's part. And then the agenda will be released as per typical on Thursday or Friday. You will hopefully at least have a few extra days. I don't know if that sounds reasonable or not.
Well, it is what it is, I guess. Is this thing due to the state July 1st?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, I get it.
Any other questions?
Not having read it yet, I started, but like I said, I only got it a 3 days ago or so. Is it laid out in plain English anywhere in this document that the figures that are provided and so on are based on what our water year is going to look like? That none of this is like cast in stone, it's just the best we can do, not having a crystal ball?
We do lay out how we estimated the projections, but they're all just called projections. But we do have the procedures, but we may be able to go.
I get concerned about a document like this goes out, and there's first, many people don't have the ability or time to read the thing. And then when you don't deal with it day in and day out, it's kind of like it's a real struggle to understand what's going on. And I would hate for certain groups of people or people with agendas or something like that to be able to say, well, you already laid it out, and you got way more water than what you need. And really, we don't know where we're going to be from year to year, and it's getting more dicey.
Ron, can you further explain that? I'll make a comment. If we look back at each year, the sort of just to pull a metric, the flow, the unimpaired flow in the river, except for 1 year, 1977, has enough water to fulfill the demand. So there's a safe yield report that we put together showing that 20,100 acre feet of water. And so that's the basis here of the water supply being met each year. Now, if I understand you correct, each year is unknown. So you're right, we don't have a crystal ball. And so one section that you might read first is chapter 3. So there's a section 3.2.1 that I believe has an explanation of what, in plain English, as best we could write it, that may help provide information on how the system works and how we look at each year moving forward. And so, yeah, you're right. There is a, we're not a district with a 80,000 acre foot reservoir and a 20,000 acre foot of demand, so that each year we always have water sitting in a reservoir. And so that is something that we watch, having little carryover storage. And so I think that may be what you're talking about. And so, but on kind of a post-mortem, if you look at every year after the fact, there was enough water there in each year.
I understand. I appreciate the explanation, and I will read that section 3 first.
Okay.
I having lived here as long as I have, and having been coming to Tuolumne County since I was knee high to a grasshopper, I mean, way back in the late 40s, early 50s. The weather is nothing like it was as I grew up. And it doesn't mean that it'll go to bad to where, you know, it's not going to be workable. But then again, we don't have any guarantee. And I don't like the feeling of a sliding snowpack and water availability and us planning on it. That's all I'm trying. And this points out another thing to me. For us to acquire PG&E and those water rights, that is a have to. That is a no. We just have to make that happen if we want to feel comfortable about being water suppliers for this community.
Glenn, to follow up on Ron, as you know, we've got a pretty strong board that it really wants to look at how are we going to become sustainable in the face of climate change. We've got historic data, but as you know, NOAA and others are now resetting normal to a new normal as the baseline, which so what we call something that doesn't compare to the past normal because it's extreme and doesn't follow how we grew up with the weather, that is now the normal. And so my concern, and just tell me when I can meet with you, or we can have another informal workshop where I can ask you questions.
Barbie, you cut out.
Sorry, I'm getting bounced out of my system. I apologize. I have concerns about sort of the uneven treatment of population, climate, and our adaptation to it, and uneven treatment or lack of context, let's say, like even mentioning that that bill, the SBX 77 is statewide. That was mentioned, but only once. What water loss, redefine that in.
Sorry, we lost again, Barbara.
I keep getting bumped off. I really apologize.
We hear you now.
Okay, I don't know
There
for
you go.
how long.
I
Yeah, I just have some questions. The recycled water has more of a section. Why not a section on planned, improved, and expansions and methods of encouragement of raw water, let's say?
But part of
So,
the
any rate,
yeah, I'll make a
I'm
quick
sorry,
comment with that one. There's requirements for the urban water plan and the water shortage contingency plan. And so the documents carefully prepared to ensure that we address all of those items that are part of that legislation. And in the behind the piece here, there's a number of tables that the district is preparing with Kennedy and Jinks help to submit to the Department of Water Resources as per their framework and plan. And so there is so the plan as you see it here is primarily pulled together to address all of those requirements. So other elements, I believe, were free form. We can input those elements, but they're not. They may not be here because this is addressing all of the law.
go ahead.
So
Okay.
yeah, we can.
So,
Yeah, your feedback is good. You can have an email perhaps. So I'll look to my bosses
okay.
and to
Yeah.
get your comments and how with things you may want to see in the plan, and we can address how we put those in or what we can do.
Yeah, that sounds great. Just little things. There's so I'll send you an email. I'll kind of say what my thought is behind the my comment. You know, for an example, I think it is extremely important in the history of the ditch that we really mentioned that it's the system that's eligible to the National Register, not just parts of the system, but the system, and mentioned bed there. I think the explanation starts out is that it's irrigation water, and you know, it just seems like a cold reader. This is kind of misleading in a way, and so the same with anyway, I'll send you my comments, and then we can maybe get on the phone and we can, you know, talk about that because they're subtle, but I think they're important.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, and then we won't hold the group here hostage.
I would like to also ask, how was the public notified that this is coming out or whatever? Or if they have not been told yet, how will they be? And then maybe there could be, if it's going to be, you have to go to the website, that there's a readily available link, maybe right on the home page, that they could just click on, make it as simple as possible, and maybe have a lead-in note, if you want to call it that, that it's suggested that you might want to read section 3 first and then dive into it.
Okay, there's a table on the page in section 1 that lists the agencies that we reached out to directly. So we found a contact, an email, and actually reached out to those groups to, one, inform them that this process is taking place, and to encourage them to review the 2015 plan, and that the 2020 plan was pending. And then especially with the city and the county. And then secondly, they were alerted the same time the board was on Friday. I believe most of these were a direct email to a contact, and there is a link to the urban plan and the water shortage plan downloadable off of the TUD website. And so they're in that communication, they were directed to go to that plan there. Now, that's a good point there. There's a lot of information. Some of this is new. Some of it is an update from the 2015 plan, which is partly why we alerted people to look at the 2015 plan as well. And so then to encourage a community input. And that's part of what the urban planning was intended to do, is to get that input. So now in terms of pointing people to specific sections, maybe we can work with Jennifer to have that, maybe those few sections that are new. Certainly the water shortage contingency plan is new. However, it's really squeezing, it's a new format of what we already do in our regulation 12. And then, to whatever new sections are. But after that, we don't know for sure what the community would be interested in specifically. Ron, based on your question, I happen to know that, that chapter 3 would be, that may either answer your question or would be of interest to you to read first. But I don't know what would be interesting to other folks in the community.
I understand that, and I would never want to tell anybody how to go about reading this huge document. But I just think some sort of helpful note before they jump into it, like just a suggestion type thing. If you have questions on this or that, you may want to read this section first. If you have questions on this or that, you may want to read this section first, or start at the beginning and work your way right on through a couple hundred pages.
Good point, Ron. I'll work with Jennifer. Maybe there's some ideas. We may be able to have a list of the chapters that up front, someone can just look at one document and see the titles of each of the chapters, for example, and then and including the appendices. So the appendices, we reference a lot of information. So someone may want to go right to a document in the appendices too. And that's, at least that would be like a 1 or 2 page overview when they can see the items from there. I'm thinking just on my feet here.
Yeah, it reminds me of an FAQ, frequently asked questions. I suppose we could pretty quickly come up with some frequently asked questions we could put somewhere in the front of a document, or some sort of however we reach out to people. So that comes to my mind.
Okay.
I think both of you have got some pretty good starting point ideas. And I guess what my concern is, I want to make sure that the public feels included and not excluded. I mean, yeah, I'm sure they get to read the document, but a lot of this is going to be like Greek to them. And if they really have an interest, be nice if they had sort of a little roadmap in order to figure out what they're looking at.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we could maybe make changes to the executive summary to maybe make it more of an outline format versus um, so much narrative.
Thank you all for thinking about it. I appreciate it.
Can I ask a couple more questions? And these are going to be really basic. This is about DWR requiring this plan of every single urban water purveyor, and urban is described as over 3,000 customers. Do I have that right?
Yeah, pretty close. 3,000 acre feet delivered or 3,000 customers. Yes.
Okay. And so they want to track our water, right?
Yes, the state is tracking our water on a monthly basis too.
Okay. Because, the public doesn't get any of this. The reason we have to do this, it's not because of our love of writing documents, and we're different because every drop of water that's not evaporated is utilized for downstream benefit. We do not live next to the ocean. So our losses are really downstream benefit, and so it's kind of crazy for us to look at a coastal definition of all that. So at any rate, I'm very protective of the water in our county, and
Good.
and of your time and Jennifer's time, certainly ratepayer dollars to do this. But sometimes the public needs to understand the position that we're in to have to crank out one of these reports, which is basically just sort of like a chip, like you put a chip in a dog so they can track you.
Oh,
I'm just kind of venting, but the public does not understand the regulatory. Like you said, there are reasons, just like CEQA, there are elements that we have to address. We're mandated to address, and maybe we might consider something like that as a little educational piece to this, and I'd be glad to help with that.
Yeah, I would say that we want to point out that this is just one more California state unfunded mandate that the TUD ratepayers have to step up and pay for. And it's not something, like you said, we don't, TUD is not in love with turning out documents like this, considering the amount of time and money it takes in order to produce it.
Yeah. I think from what Barbara and Ron you've just described, there are. I think there's a number of. In fact, I know there's a number of places that we can pull descriptions of this legislation, including why and the reasoning and the history behind each one. But Ron, I think you said too somewhere in there, most people aren't paying attention to this. They don't have much interest. However, they need to. And I think this plan is one. I think it's quite valuable because it is an important planning document, and part of its unfunded mandate, but it's something the district does that we already are doing all of these things anyway. This helps boil it down into one place for the public to see. And then secondly, the legislation to watch, although this may be outside of our meeting here, it's the SB 606 and the Assembly Bill 1668. making water conservation a way of life. That is going to impact people because the state will require that they use even less water than they are now. And yeah, that's a tough one. That's something that the public should definitely see. Now that said, that these bits of information that are available are dry and boring, and boiling that into something that people can read and absorb in a plain language format will be interesting. I like Jennifer's idea of maybe either retooling the executive summary or putting a like a one-page forward document with a listing of chapters and a listing of appendices, that somebody can just read that in a 2-minute read and then decide what sections they want to dive into, because it is a big topic with a lot of moving parts, and directing somebody to what they're interested in it's a difficult task.
I totally understand, and I appreciate you, you folks listening to our concerns and suggestions. I just want to throw out that where people used to and still do, to a large majority probably, their knowledge of water is that you turn the knob on the faucet and the water comes out and everything's looking really good. But we have, with the fact that we have been entering this time where the weather is not the same as it has been, there's many more people now that are very, very concerned and are watching and trying to learn a lot more as to what's going to happen with their water supply. And I think that you folks with your jobs, you don't realize how important they are becoming to the common person. So anyway, good job, and appreciate you taking in our ideas and thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and yeah, good job, Jennifer. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Well, if there are no more questions, I'll get this out of your way.
Oh, alrighty. Yeah. We'll I can brief with Don and Eric and afterwards, and then yeah, if there's any more questions, let us know. After that, that's all we have at this point.
Well, thank you. Really, that was good, and I see it as a planning document. I thought the introduction, of it did cover the why we have to do this, but if it is a planning tool, then I think that there's some things that we could add to it to make it more meaningful. So Glenn, I'll and Dawn and Eric, I'll email you guys just some suggestions.
Thank you, Barbara.
Okay,
Thank
so
you,
with
Glenn,
that,
thank you. Looking forward to it.
are we okay? I'm sorry, go ahead, Ron.
I just wanted to thank them all for their work on this, because I know it was a marathon and it's not over with, unfortunately. And I just can't wait to jump into it and start reading it.
Great. I don't hear
Thanks,
that
Jack.
enough.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was very wise to allow at least an hour on that. Good thinking on that one. And we'll just go to discussion, item number 2, discussion of future water storage, tank improvements, consolidations in the Cedar Ridge and Ponderosa Hills.
Director Balin, before we move on to the next item, is there any committee recommendation for item 1?
I think the only recommendation is that staff will work with the committee to I don't know, review the document in detail.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, does that sound okay, Ron?
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay, Melissa, let me know when you're ready for the next item.
I'm sorry, go right ahead.
Okay. Is that you?
It is. I'll take my cue. So this item is pretty informal. It's not an action item. We're not requesting anything from the committee at this time. It is really just an opportunity to share with the committee some of the vision that your staff has for future improvements to storage facilities in the Cedar Ridge and Ponderosa Hills water system. The objective here is for you folks to step away from this meeting with kind of an idea of what maybe future actions the board would need to take relative to property acquisition, which would be in closed session, or relative to the capital improvement plan and some of the project construction related projects that we see. Some of these may be way out there. Some of them may be shorter term. Certainly land acquisition precedes construction and can frequently be the critical path for us to move forward with some of these. So what I've done is just put together a Google Earth. I'd like to share screen here and orient all of us as to where we're actually talking about. So give me a moment here and I will get this set up. All right. I'm hopeful that you folks are looking at a Google Earth screen at this point.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Ron, for confirming. Here is our Cedar Ridge. Basically, the water system boundary is highlighted in yellow here, and I should back up and orient everyone here. We all know where Cedar Ridge is, but here's Highway 108 and Twain Hart, Big Hill Road. Kewen Mill Road comes right off here and runs all the way up to Cedar Ridge. It is an isolated water system for the district. However, Crystal Falls water treatment here off Mount Elizabeth Drive is very close, but Crystal Falls and Cedar Ridge are not interconnected. In addition, here is Sierra Pines. Sierra Pines is not connected to Cedar Ridge either. However, our long-term plan would be to construct our treatment facility here at Sierra Pines, and the board has adopted the notice of determination for the CEQA, which included interconnecting pipelines that would allow Sierra Pines water to eventually reach Crystal Falls. From Crystal Falls, we envision an interconnecting pipeline that would allow us to consolidate Cedar Ridge and to eliminate the Cedar Ridge water treatment plant and Clearwell. That's significant because if you look at Cedar Ridge here, we currently have 3 different storage facilities. We have the Springs tank, which is very, very small and serves part of the lower pressure zone here. And I should say Cedar Ridge elevation varies widely. I mean, we've got probably about 400 feet of, almost 400 feet, 360 feet of elevation difference between the top here, as we call the upper tanks, and then the lower part of the service area. Our vision would be at some point to consolidate storage at the upper zone so that water can reach the entire service area. I'll see if I can give you a perspective here. You can see that, you know, if we were able to get water up to larger tanks in this point, we would then be able to gravity down and serve the entire service area, versus currently our treatment facility is in the middle pressure zone at an elevation that requires us to pump up to the tanks and then also gravities down. And the reason that is it's right next to the ditch, but it isn't the most efficient way for us to consolidate our storage, and doesn't make these storage facilities usable to anyone above that elevation. So we have looked at the tanks here at the upper site, and I do have some photos I could share, or they were in the staff report.
Eric, Eric,
yes, go ahead.
Can I just get some context on this? Did we inherit this system?
I believe the system was acquired. There may have been a very modest payment, or it may have been acquired. Don, do you know more detail on the history?
I know a little bit more. So this came over as part of the Crystal Falls Water Company acquisition, which included Cedar Ridge, Crystal Falls, and I feel like one other system, but there may have been some money exchanged in this, but yes. And that would have happened right at the time of the TUD merging of the other two systems, right around the same time.
Okay, so we acquired, one way or another, we acquired this. The tanks were already there. Some were along the ditch system. Am I getting the right picture of this?
Exactly,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just needed some context. Okay.
Sure.
Interrupt anytime. That's important. If I'm going into details and there's no context, it's not of any value to you folks. So really what, you know, I'll be brief. We have a site here, and I don't have the property boundaries shown, but our property boundary is too small to really keep these tanks in service and build a larger tank. It's possible it could be done with some retaining walls, but it's just not ideal. And so one alternative would be to acquire a little portion of land. When I say small portion, I'm talking like 1/3 of an acre adjacent to this site that would allow the district to build a new storage tank in this area and demolish these two and replace them eventually with one larger. In a perfect world, we would have 2 tanks at each site, or 2 tanks per pressure zone, so that we would be able to maintain them appropriately. And they wouldn't be constructed at the same time. There'd be one tank constructed, maybe 5-10 years later, there'd be another tank. So we are on a maintenance cycle that doesn't encumber our budget with having to try to maintain 2 tanks at the same time. And that's really all I had for this committee as it relates to Cedar Ridge. If there are any questions, just wanted to let our board know that in our capital improvement plan, we did have some acquisition of land. Your staff's working on that, and if there's more details, we will come to the board in closed session with that. We don't have budgeted any money at this time to build new Cedar Ridge tanks, nor do we have budgeted any funds to build the pipeline connecting. And that would be something we would look at in the future.
Eric, I have a question maybe to add some more context. Did you have pictures, relatively recent pictures of the existing upper tanks to share?
I do. Let me
Before you go, oh, never mind.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want me to go back? Sorry.
Yeah, if you don't mind. I mean, I don't want to derail what Dawn's talking about. I hope we can get back to that. But while you still have this up, my question is after we've been able to get the pipelines connected to the new Sierra Pines treatment plant, they're all gravity, all the way down to Cedar Ridge, correct?
So once we get water to these tanks, it is gravity through pressure reducing valves for the entire service area, with the exception we have a very small hydro zone right at the top.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is the water coming from Sierra Pines will go to that to the new upper tank or tanks that you envision putting in at the top of Cedar Ridge. It'll all be gravity.
Unfortunately, no, unfortunately it won't. The water from Sierra Pines will gravity to this Crystal Falls water treatment plant site. From this point, it will have to be pumped to reach the upper tanks. And
Is that the end of the road there? I mean, that will be as far as water will travel, or will there'll be another pipe that comes out of that top area and then go down to that, I don't know, there's a big tank and stuff just down the hill from that area, as I recall.
once the water reached the upper tanks, our intention would be to serve the existing distribution system as is. It wouldn't be for growth or for expansion, but it's possible that the system could expand. Now, I'm not sure which tank, Ron, you're speaking of, so I don't think I'm answering your question very well.
Is it the Comstock tank or something like that?
The Comstock tank is actually right here. And this Comstock tank is separate and disconnected from the Cedar Ridge water system. So water from Sierra Pines would eventually, I'm trying to not get you guys your head spinning because it gets a little confusing with this. Here's Sierra Pines. We do have water mains in place, but would need to do some improvements to deliver water down here and then eventually over to through where part of the techite is being replaced. Water would come right through here up to this tank and then past this tank all the way to Crystal Falls. So Sierra Pines water would reach this point and this point by gravity. Unfortunately, once we get to Crystal Falls, we do need to pump this to get it into Cedar Ridge.
And so over time, what that'll end up being is a redundancy. In other words, you won't have to pump it because after you get the other line straightened up and everything connected, it'll all be gravity.
Unfortunately, I see no way to really serve Cedar Ridge without pumping. It will always require a pump. It currently requires a pump. The elevation of those upper tanks is approximately, somewhere around 300 feet higher than where the ditch is. And knowing where our treatment facilities are located, Sierra Pines included, is just, 30 feet above the ditch, and the ditch is a great contour. So Cedar Ridge will always require some form of pumping.
Well, that's too bad, but thank you. I appreciate your explaining that.
And this is why we wanted to have this conversation, is we want the board and the committee to understand what we're dealing with in terms of topography and how this fits into the bigger picture of consolidation.
Right. But I do want to kind of lift your spirits a little bit, Ron. When we get further down the road, we will be eliminating many pump stations. We will be reducing our reliability on PG&E power, just not completely.
Okay, great. I mean, you can only do what you can do.
Yeah, you're right.
The next example, go ahead, sorry.
Okay, just along the same lines. Okay, so these are going to be improvements and betterments to benefit primarily the Cedar Ridge area, correct?
Yes,
Okay, so will they form an assessment district to absorb these benefits?
that would be the board's decision on how it wants to fund improvements. Generally, our capital improvement plan is funded by the ratepayers as a whole and has improvements scattered throughout the system. If we were getting a loan from the state for this specific project and we had a debt service payment, we could easily translate that into a surcharge on those customers' bills, but it would be totally up to the board how it wanted to fund that.
The reason why I'm asking it is because it seems like we're shifting away from assessment areas. And when I run into people at the store that live up on Big Hill, or Yankee Hill, they're like going, how come you're just not making everybody else pay and we're still paying up here? And so it feels like we are shifting away from specific areas that are benefiting. And really the rest of us are benefiting, you can say indirectly, but that's true for the Big Hill area also. And so I think it may be a timely discussion. I kind of brought this up with the Sierra Pines treatment plant. Yeah, the rest of the community will benefit indirectly, but there'll be people that are benefiting directly for those improvements. So if we're going to shift away from assessment districts, and should have a conscious discussion of that, I feel.
And I don't think
Ron, what do you think?
Yeah, I think anytime you can have a good in-depth discussion and really, meet out the facts that the best decisions will come from it. And you get plenty of input, and we probably need some sort of, in time, we're going to need to, in my humble opinion, need to have some sort of plan that that's the way we do it every time, one way or the other.
In your staff, we're not making a conscious decision to get away from assessments, improvement districts. We just, Sierra Pines would benefit Cedar Ridge as well, because it would allow operation and maintenance expenses to be reduced once the treatment plant is gone. I think we just, I didn't mean for this to be a discussion on how we would finance the improvements, but I'm totally open to that. And when the board adopts the capital improvement plan, it can look at how we're funding things. And to be honest, there are a lot of benefits that go to some of our small systems that honestly, it would be really hard for those ratepayers to fund those improvements. So we have spread the costs among the entire system, but we can certainly go back and look more in depth at improvement districts and assessments.
Well, I kind of agree that everybody benefits, all the boats rise with the tide. I mean, that philosophically, that is good, but then we kind of need to revisit these portal areas, like Big Hill, that are really saddled. If we're going to kind of come out with our position on it. I'm just thinking out loud.
I'd like to just suggest that we maybe agendize that discussion down the road a bit and stick with this what they're planning for right now, because it's going to get really confusing, and my little pea brain is not going to be able to wrap around what they're presenting right now as far as how the infrastructure changes are going to go. and then try and tackle anything that has to do with financing. I just, I'll get lost.
It is a lot.
That sounds good. Sounds good.
Would the committee like me to share any photos of the upper tanks?
I personally, I don't need to look at them. They're, you know, I guess the only thing I'd like to know is possibly from you, or Don probably is more familiar with them, maybe, but I'd just like to know what condition they're in. Good, fair, poor?
Bluntly stated, they're extremely poor. They've had down rafters for 3/4 of my career here. They're in very poor shape.
That makes me feel real good.
I'm sharing the love.
Yeah, I've got some questions. I mean, no, I'm fine with that response without actually seeing the tanks. So how is fire flow going to be improved? Or maybe we can still continue to use the canal in here for fire truck access, you know, combination of both, but how will this consolidation improve the safety of this community?
Well, in terms of storage tank consolidation, by consolidating storage up at a higher elevation, it makes a larger volume available to a greater number. Now, with that said, it's dependent on the pipelines. And if you do have a water main break, you do risk reducing your ability to fight fire. However, if you're looped, your distribution system's looped, and you have more than one way to bring water down, which we do here, then you are, isolated a bit in that vulnerability. But the consolidation here of a pipeline and a pump station, it's just, you now have your treatment and in supply coming from a different direction. Here, it's with a very old water treatment plant that is going to be, or is less reliable than a new Sierra Pines would be with state-of-the-art equipment. Now, the ditch will always be accessible. And as we all know, when you come through here into Cedar Ridge, the ditch, if you can see my hand or cursor here, crosses the road right here. And I think that's a fairly good access point for firefighting apparatus to get at that water. And it runs all the way through, obviously, Cedar Ridge. So we wouldn't be affecting that ability.
I see a fire water drafting point in the future right there. And that community needs it in the worst way. Don, what is the pipe that's in the ground that's serving that community?
It's a combination of old steel line and some PVC, but primarily steel line.
So it's probably what, 40 plus years old?
Exactly, about the same date I got here. So about around the late 70s, 77 or so. Mm-hmm.
So it too is running up to its life use.
This is true. Yeah, we don't experience as many mainline breaks naturally occurring, aside from a snowplow hitting a fire hydrant. We don't experience too many mainline leaks or breaks here. In the 90s, we began to introduce corrosion control inhibitors to the water, and that in itself has greatly reduced the number of pinhole leaks and leaks of that nature. There's very few catastrophic leaks in this area. Boy, I'm going to find some wood to knock on. My construction crew will not be happy with me saying that, but anyway, just you get the point.
Yeah, what concerns me again, which I'm not against the plan. I think you guys are doing some good thinking here, and so on. But I'm just wondering, old pipe, old tanks, but we're going to build a new one at some point in time up there at the top. But now you've got a big tank and maybe two after a few years, and you got a lot of pressure and it's at the top. What's going to happen with that pipe that's in the ground that's at ends like use?
Yeah, good question. And Eric, maybe you'll correct me. And if Matt Nolte, our distribution superintendent, were here, he would help me out here too. But these old mains won't see any difference or very little difference in pressure in the way I see it. We have pressure reducing stations all along the route to break pressure, to reduce the pressure so the system sees a normal amount of pressure. So there shouldn't be an increase in pressure, nothing dramatic.
Okay, and there's like, those are simple, I hate nothing simple anymore, but so those are like simple reducing valves that don't take hardly any maintenance, or we don't have to worry about them breaking down like we have to about pump stations and that sort of thing.
Underscore what you just said. They're much easier to maintain than a tank or a pump station. Exactly.
Thank you.
Good question, Ron. If we're okay, I'd like to move over to Ponderosa Hills unless there are any other questions about Cedar Ridge.
I think Don had asked a question or wanted you to show something.
Oh yeah, I did, but it's pretty clear. I just wanted to show you a recent picture of the tank to give you an idea of the condition and the proximity of the neighbors in and around. So, but you two have a good understanding, so we don't have to do that.
Thank you. I would like to be able to eat my lunch today.
I'll be
Thank
quick.
you. Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna fly over to Ponderosa Hills here. And again, a lot of lines here. It's a little confusing, but Tuolumne City, Tuolumne Water Treatment Plant and Clearwell down here, all lower elevation. Water from here does not get pumped up. Ponderosa Hills is its own discrete water system, has its treatment facility here. And North Tuolumne Road runs right through it. So we serve on both sides of North Tuolumne Road. The casino is down here. So Ponderosa Hills water gets very close to the casino. But isn't exactly connected. And then this is Muller Mutual Water Company. They are a wholesale customer, and they have about 55 or 60 connections here. So we currently have the Rainbow Reservoir, which is depicted right here. And there's a little pump station right there. What it is a glorified swimming pool with a wood cover, a roof structure over it, which is highly susceptible to fire. In addition, it has a liner, a plastic liner inside, and we're only able to utilize the top 3-4 feet, I'm not even sure exactly, of that reservoir because the outlet isn't low enough for us to gravity out of the reservoir. It is about 72,000 gallons, which is not very large. It is not at the top of the hill, so we have to pump through this little pump station just to crest over the hill so that we can feed water back down to Muller Mutual Water Company. We also have to pump here at the Canyon View pump station to get water into this. So we're dependent on pumping in many scenarios here. And the reservoir, as you can imagine, is not in wonderful condition. We have replaced the roof structure, but that is only because we have not acquired any land that would really be suitable for us to build a larger facility. And we've identified a location here that would be at the top of the hill that would allow us to gravity down to Mueller Mutual and then gravity back into our distribution system, and allow us to build a steel tank that would meet standards and be more fire resilient. I also want to highlight that if we were to consolidate Ponderosa Hills with Sierra Pines someday, it could come in the form of a pipeline down the Forest Service Road from Confidence. We have water to this point. A water main down the Forest Service Road would end us up right at the water treatment plant. Water could be provided under pressure, which would allow us to fill the Rainbow Reservoir and eliminate the Canyon View pump station, and also eliminate the pump station at the Rainbow Reservoir. So 2 pump stations, 1 treatment plant, and would provide a level of supply security that we currently don't have with the current Ponderosa water treatment plant. So this is only, for big picture. I wanted the committee to see this. This other pipeline segment is a potential future that would intertie Ponderosa with Tuolumne. The reason that is valuable is because if you look at the beautiful Tuolumne water treatment plant, you'll see there's just 1 tank. And there's just 1 tank serving the entire town site of Tuolumne. So when that tank, which is not getting any younger, needs to be recoated because of corrosion, how is staff expected to do that? How are we going to facilitate that kind of maintenance? That you can see there's a site here where you could build a second tank, but rather than build a second tank, why not build a pipeline to start interconnecting your systems to provide more supply reliability that would allow you then to drain this in the winter and do a full-fledged rehab while keeping the community and the town in water. So that was, just the big picture. I'm happy to report, Ron, that this would save energy and reduce our reliance on pumping. We don't have a time frame for these projects, but they do also have a tribal component. The tribe, as they develop in the Rancheria site, they're at higher and higher elevations, and their fire flow, as we all know, is not the best. This interconnection pipeline, along with a tank on top of the ridge, would be able to supplement fire flows and enhance their ability to continue to develop on the Rancheria. So that was the big picture.
Eric,
So
were your
the-
hand, I'm sorry, Ron.
Oh, well, I'm sorry too. I just say this real quick. So the vision here is not only to make sure that that tank can be rehabbed when needed, but to take care of the entire town of Tuolumne during such an event, and the casino and the tribe, the Rancheria.
That's correct. It would help us do everything you just stated.
That's a slam dunk.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to also mention, I think, Eric, where your cursor is, your hand there is, that is where some future tribal development, they want to develop in that area. Is that correct?
I think you're correct, Don. You're more familiar with the tribal land than I am, but
I'm pretty sure, and they're really eager to get going on this development. So, the question, right, is do we pump up from Tuolumne, build a new pump station in Tuolumne, and pump up to, where, a new tank perhaps, so we can gravity down? Or do we do what we're talking about, build this new tank up on the hill, make this connection, and then feed all of this by gravity 100% from the Sierra Pines treatment plant. This Ponderosa treatment plant, and I'm not going to say it's a humble opinion, my opinion, that Ponderosa treatment plant is already stretched thin and in poor condition, and I just don't see how it alone can support this development for the tribe.
If I can butt in here, all I've got to say is I've had several trips to the Ponderosa Hills Water Treatment Plant and to the site, and I have some other words to describe it. And I think that running that pipeline down is the smartest thing I've heard in a long time, because that will allow the elimination of that water treatment plant completely, correct?
Correct.
And it'll feed that newer tank that's on the hill there,
Correct.
right?
By gravity, correct.
I'm loving it.
And the other benefit is that pipeline would be in a dirt road. So it's a less expensive type of construction than if we were coming down Tuolumne Road North and having to deal with traffic control and pavement restoration.
I like the fact that, well, I like all of the assets or the portions of this project idea, especially that we will also be able to help the Tuolumne band get their stuff going the way they want to go. I think that's huge. It's a kind of like a little payback.
Right.
Yeah, if I can add a couple of things. I think this is a really clear example of improvements, true improvements that are not growth inducing. It's very clear.
Yeah, this would just be to serve our existing customers. We were, you know, I mean, we're struggling with the maintenance aspects. We're struggling with the fact that Ponderosa Hills Water Treatment Plant, as Ron has some other choice words for it, some consultants about 10 years ago we took out there said it was the ugliest water treatment plant they had ever seen in their career. And that was 10 years ago. So, you know, we are on borrowed time there, and we were just scratching our heads saying, do we really want to put millions of dollars into Ponderosa Hills when we can build this pipeline, you know, down a dirt road? Just made a lot of sense.
I would guess, Eric, that pipeline is maybe the same. The cost of doing that is probably the same cost to do the Ponderosa treatment plant, yet the O&M to maintain this versus this is, there's no comparison, which is more affordable in the end.
I think the pipeline would be millions of dollars actually less, Don, after you look at building a new treatment plant.
Yeah.
Either way, it is a smarter financial decision, and honestly, I think more reliable, that we won't be having to pump.
Right. And I know we're kind of getting away from the main topic, but I think we're going to find opportunities for grant fundings for the majority of that project, the way it's being described.
Or that would be the icing on the cake.
Well, I'm going to,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Barbara, go ahead.
Oh, no, actually, this is a really good opportunity to say I am so sick of Zoom when it comes to this kind of stuff for me. The next water committee meeting, and Ron, if you're in favor of this, I think we need to sit down around in the boardroom so that we can have a meaningful discussion. My computer is, I just want to take it behind the house and shoot it. And it is, so if that's okay, the next meeting we've got next month, let's meet in person. Because, you know, Don, when we met, and Eric too, with Reba Fuller, you know, she was very, very interested in these improvements for all kinds of things that they're doing for sure down there, but just water reliability, just plain old water reliability. And the other thing that Reba was interested in is the availability of raw water sent, to the west side area for fire protection as well. So she wants a field trip and of the whole thing. And I just want to thank you for providing some maps, and we'll get that coordinated too. But the next meeting, let's please meet in the office.
You're not
you
going to
okay
get
with
any
that?
arguments with me. I love to meet in person, and I love giving tours and of that system and trying to give a good picture of what we're dealing with. So happy to do so.
Ron, how do you feel about meeting in the office for our water committee meeting?
Let's meet in the office for every meeting.
Well, I agree there too, but we can control
I'm being
this one.
facetious. I'm being
Okay.
facetious. Of course,
Okay.
yes.
Well, I think that was a good segue into a field trip, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you were segueing into, Don?
Yeah, I absolutely love going on field trips and showing the ugliest treatment plant, quote unquote, from somebody from 10 years ago. It may be the ugliest, but doggone it, I'm proud. I'm so proud of the fact that we've been able to spend as little money on that thing and make it run and meet all of the standards that are far exceed the standards of when the plant was originally constructed. So yes, I would love to be a part of a tour and a field trip.
You're going to have to show us, Don, when we go on that field trip, how you pet the termites who have their arms locked there at the Ponderosa plant.
I've got them named. They've all have names. They're pets.
Well, on that, can we go to item 3 regarding scheduling a tour of the Sonora Water Treatment Plant? We ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Melissa, are we ready?
We are ready to go.
Okay, great. Okay, well, this item is for me, and I too am going to try to share some screens, but just to start off with, it's well documented, the condition and the importance of the existing Sonora Water Treatment Plant and all of the communities that it serves and partnerships that it serves. We're also very familiar with the effort that the district has been underway for many years on acquiring new property for a new Sonora Water Treatment Plant. Well, all of this, no fault of anybody here, has just taken more time than we'd hoped. So, the age of the existing water treatment plant, the Sonora Water Treatment Plant, has come to a point in its life where we're going to have to, I feel like we're going to have to do something at the existing water treatment plant. In fact, we are already constructing a pipe to bypass what is called the Clearwater Reservoir. So what I'm referring to, when I say I feel like we're going to need to spend some money there, I mean into the tunes of millions of dollars. And so I've said at a couple of open board meetings or full board meetings and other committee meetings that this is a decision that Dawn and operations and management, we can't make on our own and don't want to make on our own. We would love to have a full engaged discussion with the committee and then later with the full board to help us with the path forward. So Eric, I'm going to try. I've not shared screens before, so I'm going to go ahead and share a screen so I can give you an idea of just what I'm talking about. And first, I'm going to show you a video that was taken not too long ago by Gadiel with our new drone. This is really cool. Oops, except it's starting at the end instead of the beginning. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
So this
Yes.
is a video, Barbara, and I hope your screen can hang on here to show this. But
Yeah.
again, if we were in person, we wouldn't have to talk about that, and I apologize. So anyway, so here's a video from our new drone, and you can see this is a chlorine pump building that we're flying over now, followed by the sedimentation basin. And I've been on this, in and around the sedimentation for 21 years. And I know it's in poor condition, but this picture just scares me to death. I don't know if you can see my cursor, and it's pointing to a baffle boards that is supposed to, this water is supposed to serpentine in and around the sed basin and not short circuit and go this way. This is in very, very poor condition. If this fails, we're going to be in trouble. And to replace this, or even to rehab this, is many thousands of dollars, and to replace it with a modern one is in the millions of dollars. Okay, as we've passed the sedimentation basin, we're coming up on what is called the Clearwater Reservoir. So in the old days, water would come by gravity through the ditch, serpentine through the sedimentation basin, and then the clear water, the settled water, would just simply flow over this where my cursor is, into this reservoir, open reservoir, and then out gravity to town. That's the way it was. It started in 1927. Well, in 1983 or so, I guess it was the county that owned it then, decided to finally put a cover on this, and it served very well for many, many years, but the sun has just, and age has just done this reservoir in. Water rules and regulations have changed so much so that it was no longer useful. We had to have what's now called a clear well. The way this Clearwater Reservoir was constructed, it could never be used for a clear well. And a clear well is a very important part of water treatment, where water in contact with chlorine over time makes it potable. And so we were never able to use this as a clear well. So going back, I don't mean to get into treatment. I won't get into it. I just want to show you the overall condition of the treatment plant. So this is a key component of the overall treatment plant. And you can see how poor we fix holes in this, maybe a dozen a year. And at times we have to bring in experts to help us fix the leaks and holes in this reservoir, which compromises the sanitation of the water. Well, in 2002 or so, we constructed this clear well. And this is now how we serve the downtown area going this direction, and the Greenlee Basin going this direction. This is a 1.5 million gallon tank. It's a steel welded tank. It's in pretty good condition, although you can see some rust here and some rust here, and internally there's a little bit more rust. This tank is definitely due for some internal and external refurbishing. And if we were to go another 10 or 15 years, it would probably be beyond repair. It would have to probably be a complete rebuild. And that would, you can see how that would give us some challenges. And I want you to get to lunch, Ron, too. So I won't go too much further.
No, I wasn't talking about needing to eat. I was talking about you guys were making me ill and I wouldn't be able to eat.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, I'll stop that one, and I want to share a couple of more pictures, and I hope I'm successful here. If I can find them. Where are those? Oh, right here.
You left out one important thing there, Mr. Perkins. You did not point out to the chairman that there's not really any access to that tank, the clear well.
Meaning for redundancy?
Well, not only for redundancy, but just to be able to do any real work to it and so on.
Yeah, it's in a tight area for sure. So I wanted you to see the condition of the sed basin and the condition of the Clearwater Reservoir. That's one, those are two major components of the treatment plant that I wanted you to be able to see. Further, very important and dilapidated components of the treatment plant are these, what I'm about to describe to you. So in this picture here, you see a 1970s, early 70s vintage MCC, or Motor Control Center. It's very old, antiquated, outdated, and unsafe. To the left, if you can see, are what we call variable speed drives. This is how we control the speed of the pumps, which are just off to the screen here. You can't see those. Those are outdated and give us fits on the regular, meaning this MCC gear and those drives. That is not modern technology. This is the electromechanical device that Ron likes to tease me about and wants me to show everybody how I can program this thing. This is, again, this is late 70s, I mean, early 70s, late 60s, early 70s technology. Finding parts to replace this and finding people that actually work on this is few and far between. This little instrument and everything, this controls the entire treatment plant. If this goes out, this little round brass looking thing, if this goes out, there's going to be 2 people at the treatment plant around the clock until we get it fixed. Another picture of some HOA controls. You can just see the age. This is inside the lab. Behind this door is that device I was just referring to. So I don't think there was any more of that I really wanted to show you. If I could give you, and this happens to be a transfer switch. This is how we transfer from PG&E power to generator power. The generator is just off to the right here. And this is not automatic. So when the power goes out, somebody has to come here, fire up the generator and throw this switch, which you can see the condition of the switch. So part of the upgrades would be to include an automatic transfer switch, a modern generator and things of such. So in your agenda packet or a committee, the packet, there's a couple of things. Trevor Cowden, our water superintendent, has been on this trail for a little over a year now, trying to understand what it's going to take. He's called in experts to help him with the controls, the electromechanical controls I was talking about. He had a couple of bids and people to come to the treatment plant take tours and look at that component. Tesco Controls is the example I gave to you. It was the best bid we and most thorough bid we got. And at the conclusion of the proposal to upgrade all of the controls, not the Stead Basin, not the Clearwater Reservoir, but just the controls that run the plant, just for the design and engineering was well over $200,000, or not well over, it was over $200,000. And we know that that's only 10% of the completed project. By the time you buy all of the components that make up those controls, you're talking about $2.5 to $3 million project. And again, that doesn't touch that Stead Basin that I showed you, and it doesn't touch that Clearwater Reservoir, and it doesn't help out the Clearwell. So just spending $2.5 to $3 million is enough for me to say I need to have a full-blown discussion with this committee and then later with the board to help me with helping us with making this decision, thinking about the new Sonora treatment plant down the road, which is many, many, many years out. As fast as I want to run and go do that, we know through experience that's many years out. So it dawned on me after I got this quote from Tesco that I wondered if we could reach out to another consultant who we've used in the past, Carollo Engineering. And I got on the phone who we used up at Sierra Pines for the preliminary design up there at Sierra Pines. We had a great relationship with them. It was a great experience. So I felt very comfortable picking up the phone and calling Chris Cleveland of that firm and had a conversation. Well, he really quickly knew exactly where I was going. And he explained to me that they have done this type of work with many other districts. So the whole point there is I'm asking for some guidance on whether or not I should call up Carollo and give them a notice to proceed to help us with a planning document. They're going to come to the treatment plant, take a tour, see all the components, go back, recommend, and then through a couple of workshops, both virtual, all virtual, and then come back with some sort of help planning document to help us guide us with a path forward with the existing Sonora water treatment plant. Hopefully to spend as little money on the treatment plant as we could while also moving forward with the new Sonora treatment plant. So I know in the staff report, I asked for either permission to move forward out of this committee or take it to the full-blown board. And I now just feel like we should just take it to the full-blown board. So I hope that was clear enough and concise enough, but I'm ready for questions if you have them for me.
I've got a few, Don, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So first, you've said this many times, but just because we're talking about this issue, my first question is, how many ratepayers, what areas does that Sonora water treatment plant serve? That's my first and most important question. And then you mentioned that the new Sonora water treatment plant is, well, I don't even know whether several years out is a good way to say it. I mean, I would hope that's all it would be, but it's a long ways out. So if that's the case, what in the world would TUD be able to do if we had some sort of catastrophic failure there at the old Sonora water treatment plant? That's my question 2. And question 3 is, knowing what you all know and what you're relating to us, it seems to me we really don't. It's like spinning a roulette wheel if we think that thing's going to last, the old one, until the new one gets built. And so my third question is, what's the danger of not moving forward on getting that treatment plant straightened up?
All solid questions. You know how I feel about all this. So who does it serve? It serves all of the downtown area, 5,200 connections, 5,200 connections, all of the downtown area, the hospital, all of the Greenlee Basin, Lambert Lake, Cuesta Serena, East Sonora. That's all uphill, pumping. Then downhill, out Campo Seco Road, all the way down, Cuesta Serena, Jamestown, Chicken Ranch. So a lot of stakeholders, obviously. Your other question, your second question, what I think was, what would happen, I suppose, if we had a catastrophic failure? Well, it would depend on the nature of the catastrophic failure. If one, it didn't compromise the quality of water, like I said, we would have to go through a manual operation mode, manually turn pumps on, open valves, close valves, monitor flows, decrease rate, increase rate, just to keep the system running. If it compromised the water quality, which I fear because of that Clearwater Reservoir cover, well, then we have a different situation where we'd have to notify all of those 5,200 connections about, possibly boil order. The water would not be potable. So that would obviously be detrimental. What was the third question, Ron?
Well, I think you skipped over my second one, but that wasn't really fair for me to line them out like that. I just was saying that my opinion is, I don't think it's just going to be a few years till we can get that Sonora water treatment plant built up and running. I mean, I hope it is, but things never work out like that, it seems to me. So what's going to happen? what would happen? Well, I think you kind of did answer it. If the old plant went down without the new one being in place, it sounds like we're in deep doo-doo.
Yeah, and so that's the nature of the urgency to bring us to this committee and later to the board. So, you know, I guess if I didn't mention this, I meant to. Currently, we are very near completion of the work it's going to take to bypass that Clearwater Reservoir. And so that alone should remove the fear for us to have a contamination problem where we would have to notify the public about non-potable water. So we're, I don't know, a month or two perhaps away from completing that project and being able to bypass that reservoir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have no questions.
Okay, so I take it the recommendation will be to take this proposal to the full board.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Don, just for my own clarification, the proposal, are you referring to the Corolla proposal, the Tesco proposal, or both?
Thank you for clarifying. No, I do only mean the Corolla proposal for whatever it was, 48,000 and some change.
Okay.
And then that would, once that evaluation report, whatever you want to call it, has been done, if I understand it correctly, you and staff will have choices possibly of different methods that for renovation, and then you could thumb through those, figure them out, put cost to it, and then bring that back to the committee and finally to the full board for trying to get that thing rehab, at least to a point that'll get us to the new water treatment plant. Is that correct?
That is precisely what I'd like to do, to provide options. I don't know if there's bookends, you know, the least expensive to the most expensive and something in between. But this is where Corolla will be very helpful to guide us in this planning document, so we can come to the board with some options.
Do you or anybody else, and I don't want you to spend any time on this, but one of the things as I have evaluated this situation is that if there is a failure and then you're on a 24/7 day a week situation with employees, that cannot be inexpensive. I mean, that's going to be labor like crazy, as well as the vehicles running back and forth. I don't know. It just sounds horribly expensive right there.
It is not just expensive, but you know, you throw in PSPS and any other natural disaster that's looming out there, it'll just put a stress on our workforce that we just don't need to see. But you know, you do have a very seasoned staff who are ready and willing to step up to the challenge. We won't have a choice, of course. So, but you're right. We need to address this.
Would TUD have enough water treatment personnel certified in order to cover that kind of hours on the job?
One of the beautiful things about the way the operations department is made up of is we have, short answer, yes. We wouldn't have to bring in outside forces. We have a lot of cross-trained people here. There are people in many other departments that also have treatment license and can, if need be, called to duty to assist. Yes.
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, so
Well,
Ronnie, your turn. the recommendation then? Are we clear on the recommendation?
I am. Are you, Melissa?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And I just want to say thank you too for listening. You know how important all this is to us, so thank you.
You bet.
Okay, is there any other discussion on these items?
Not for me.
Well, then, if there's no further discussion, then I'll adjourn the Water Committee meeting at 10:12.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Don and Eric.